Welcome to the Truth Has No Sides podcast. These conversations will be had to expand the minds and the consciousness of you, the listener. If you like the content of the show, please like the video and subscribe to our channel to help this message be seen and heard by more people. Thank you for being here and enjoy the episode. Alrighty, two red dots, we're recording. Today's guest is Marshall Parnell, or as many people call him, Master Marshall Parnell. You'll find out why soon. He is actually not a friend from soccer, so that's a rare interviewee. I met Marshall maybe a decade ago at the gym, and we just crossed paths and we just felt the presence of each other and really enjoyed our conversations. And it's lasted into lunches, to simple walks through the park, bullshitting with each other. And one of the most important things I remember from him was, I'm trying to keep this story vague so I don't upset anybody, but I was doing something at the gym with a group of guys, and he would always watch. And he would see one side of me when I was a different side of me when I was with this group of individuals. And it took him a couple months because he wanted to just let me be me. But he finally said, correct me if I'm wrong, you said pigeons don't fly with eagles?
Chickens don't fly with eagles.
Okay, and that kind of struck me. And I think I continued with that group just because of my competitive nature for a few more months, and then it kind of just died out. But that's a great opening story for Marshall. Marshall, will you please let the audience know who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into your past and everything else, because we've got a half an hour, we got an hour, we have 2-3 hours, however long we want.
Sure, awesome. Yeah, so my name is Marshall Parnell, and I'm the headmaster of Lotus Blossom Martial Arts. It's a traditional martial arts school I founded nearly 25 years ago. I've been studying martial arts for 41 years, including on and off trips to Korea for the last 20 plus years. I did some time in the United States Marine Corps, and I spend all my time now basically trying to help coach people master their mind, their body, and their emotions.
Okay, so we're going to go off. Yeah. When did everything start from you? When did everything start? Was it the military? Was it spiritual? Was it just always training your mind because of your father?
I was drawn to philosophy at a very young age. I've been studying, philosophy really as long as I can remember. I was always drawn to the martial arts because, not in the sense of be able to fight or to protect myself, but I loved the monk concept of mastering oneself, mastering one's mindset, mastering one's focus, not letting one's emotional self derail their life. And I was drawn to that from I remember the earliest maybe Kung Fu TV series where you would see these monks mastering difficult physical things, mental things, emotional things. And I've always been drawn towards self-mastery and the strategic value that adds to one's life when you're consciously, deliberately making moves instead of just bumping into life and waiting to see what happens. So, real quick, just a little bit of context on that chicken and eagle story, if you don't mind. That's a story my father would tell me all the time when he saw me not meeting up to my potential. And the story goes, a farmer walks out one day to his yard, and in his chicken coop, there's all these chickens, and there's this big, beautiful, gorgeous eagle in the middle of this chicken coop. And the farmer goes, that's just not right. Those chickens their karma is to, scratch amongst the mud, eat worms, and live flightlessly on the ground. You're an eagle. You deserve to soar through the mountains, see the sky, and be in the heavens. So he grabbed the eagle, and he stood up on top of the fence, and he throws the eagle in the air. And the eagle kind of flaps for a second, and he sees the chickens, and he goes back down, and he starts pecking at the worms with the chickens. He goes, no, you're an eagle. You need to fly. So he grabs the eagle, and goes to the top of the barn, and throws the eagle off the barn. And the eagle starts to fly for a second, starts to feel its potential, feel what it can do, but it sees the chickens again, and it soars back down, and it's hanging out with the chickens. And the farmer's like, nope, this won't be. So the farmer takes the eagle, puts him in his truck, drives to the top of a mountain, and throws the eagle off a mountain. And the eagle starts to soar and catch the drifts, starts to fly, and suddenly you can see the oceans and the mountains and all that is. And he's powerful, and he's fast, and he can see everything and go anywhere. and he realizes his potential and he soars off. And so it's a story of when you surround yourself with chickens, and there's no demeaning connotation with chickens. They're just not the same. They're not designed for the same life. But when you surround yourself with chickens, you tend to think like a chicken, act like a chicken, and not maximize your true potential. And so when I observed Charlie hang out with this specific group, and I saw Charlie operating on a mode that surprised me, because Charlie was, from the first minute I saw Charlie, he was impressed me a lot. And it has to do with what I call the difference between humans and people. And I took one look at Charlie and saw a human, and an evolved human at that. And I always was impressed with him on almost everything. And I was watching him engage in this one activity, and suddenly he was very unimpressive to me. I was like, well, why did he suddenly become so much less impressive? And I looked at the environment, and I looked at what they were doing. I went, yeah, makes sense. So one day I felt confident of the relationship that I'm like, yo, bro, you're really an eagle. Spend your time with eagles, because you're going to soar. And that was kind of the backdrop on that story.
Well, I got to tell you, that's probably been my life story, my life's purpose, because the the 30 minutes I had between you walking your dog and us starting a little bit later today, I watched a little video on the number one regret of people with cancer, or they know they're going to die. It's not an immediate thing. They're not 95 years old. And the number one regret is they didn't have the courage to be their authentic self. So when I hear you talk about that, fucking 6 minutes in, I'm already crying. It's something to me that's been the biggest struggle, because there's been you, there's been others, there's Nicole, my fiance, that is continuously hounding me to be better, because she knows it. She sees what you see. And I've talked about this in many podcasts, where we always look for messages in certain ways. We think they're going to be messages how others get them, through signs, through animals, through guardian angels, through seeing something, hearing a voice, or whatever. Mine, as I'm continuously talking about, is a 5'6" blonde woman who, when I'm out of line and not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because she sees that potential, she's dead in my face and saying things to me that are so 100% true, but very difficult for me to handle. Right. So yours was a little bit more soft touch, because we kind of just barely met each other, but that's a struggle for me. It's continuous. And we'll get into that.
It should be a struggle for you, Charlie, because anyone who has a very high level potential is going to struggle. Like, yeah, my dogs are coming to say hi. Thanks for the flexibility and letting us, wander a little bit this morning. But that's every human being who has great potential struggles. That's the definition of having great potential. You cannot have great potential and not struggle, because it would be a contradictory of terms.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well put. And in regards to martial arts, just to right off the bat let people know who you are, and we'll get into the younger years, when you started, how it progressed to your master, etc. But remind me, you are the highest ranking white individual in the world, basically. Did I say that racistly?
Yeah, no. In a specific martial art called Heran Kondo, which is the Korean art of the sword. It looks just like the samurai and the samurai sword and samurai training, but it's from Korea versus Japan. And in that one martial art, I am the highest ranking non-Korean in the world.
That's better. That's more politically correct. Thank you.
Yeah. I should say I'm one of. There's a few of us now. So I'm a 7th Dan, a 7th degree black belt in this martial art, and there are a few of us now. But I've been like the highest ranked in this martial art. I was the first American to place in the World Championships. So in 2002, I took the silver medal. I was the first American invited to be on the World Demonstration Chip in Korea. I've been on that team several times. I won the U.S. Opens in 2009. I've won the All-American Championships in Mexico City multiple times. I've coached about 9 times to the World Championships. I've coached several world champions. So in that specific martial art, I've got a pretty good resume.
Yeah, some would say that. When did it start? How old were you, and why? Was it, like you said, it was just because of the TV show? Was it something your dad pushed upon you? Was it just something you came into this life knowing that that's who you were?
So, I mean, I remember sparring and wrestling with my father at the earliest of ages. I mean, it's some of my first memories. And then my dad was a military martial arts guy, Vietnam veteran, special forces, survival instructor. So to him, part of this life was learning to navigate it, and that life is dangerous and life is difficult and competitive, and that part of being successful at life is developing oneself strongly. And martial arts is a really effective, efficient way of doing that. And so I trained with him since the youngest of age. There's a story about how one time we were sparring in the kitchen, and we're not exactly sure what happened. The story has changed. We were sparring, and one of us did something unexpectedly, and one of us hurt the other person. Now, I don't remember my dad ever hurting me. I remember kicking him somewhere soft once. He kind of remembers kicking me across the room and bouncing me off a refrigerator. And because he says I did something he had never seen me do before, and he reacted out of instinct, and it caused me to be hurt. I don't remember it that way, but one of us hurt one of us, and my father decided he was no longer going to train me; he was going to train professional. And my dad was honestly, he was much more concerned about my physical survival. Like, I was very small, I had a quick wit and a quick mouth, and it got me in a lot of trouble. And we grew up in, the California Bay Area when it was becoming a dangerous place to grow up, and the gangster rap revolution was starting to take place. Fighting was still a very commonplace. Getting in a fight behind the baseball backstop was not fighting; it was called recess. It wasn't called bowling back then; it was called recess. And we, as young wolves, constantly sharpened our teeth and claws and hunting instincts against each other. And honestly, I think is a part our culture is currently missing. Obviously, I don't think bullying is good or hazing is good. But when you look at any of the young cubs throughout nature, they wrestle and fight with each other, and it provides a certain level of training and confidence. But my father was actually legitimately concerned I was not going to make it through grade school. I came home with a lot of bloody noses and a lot of black eyes. And so he got me in wrestling. I think I was 6 or 7. And we actually started in Provo, Utah, and then moved to California at 7, where they didn't have junior wrestling. And then we started in traditional martial arts schools. My first master was a Chinese Sifu Ming. And then I went to a Taekwondo master, Julian Villanueva. And we moved around quite a bit. And my father never cared about what style I was in, nor did he care about what belt I had. He cared about, was the instructor hard? Was the instructor difficult? Was the instructor, someone who pushed you? And was the instructor going to make me, maximize my potential? And so I started over in several martial arts, throughout my career. I ended up getting my first degree black belt in traditional Taekwondo under Ernie Reyes. And then I joined the Marines at 18. And the Marines is really what started to shape my real understanding of martial arts. I'd been in dozens of street fights. I'd competed in several tournaments. I think I'd won the silver medal at the the national championships in the NBL national championships in 1994. And, between street fights and regular fights, I'd been in a ton, I thought. And then joined the Marine Corps, where, you're fighting other Marines. And that was a whole new aspect. And it really debunked a lot of technique. I found out a lot of techniques that I thought were good techniques were worthless. And then also, what really kind of crystallized my understanding of what martial arts really was, and that blew my mind. And this is through introspection years later. My boot camp had about 600 recruits from across the country. We were divided into 6 platoons, and we graduated about 534 Marines. And out of those 534 Marines, there are 6 honor graduates. And you're competing against everything: physical fitness, swim qual, shooting, history. I mean, every possible thing you could be tested on, you're tested on. So it's this 3-month long competition. It's considered the hardest basic training in the U.S. military, excluding special forces schools like BUDS and Recon. But it's the toughest basic training. And at the end of it, I had graduated number 1 out of 600 Marines, or 530, whatever. And I was the smallest guy. There was the 6 honor grads of like 6'2", 6'2", 6'3", 6'1", 5'10", 135 pounds. And later I'm like, how did I do that? I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the toughest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the smartest. how did I beat all of these other guys? And I'm convinced that the reason why I graduated number one was because since I was 7 years old, I've been taught to master my mental self, master my emotional self, master my physical self, learn how to harmonize those three selves and to get them to work together as a unit. And none of those guys had that advantage. And so things like obstacle courses didn't intimidate me at all. Things like jumping in the swimming pool and have drill instructors try to drown me didn't intimidate me at all. Put me in a small boxing room and have me box 60 other guys in a row didn't intimidate me. None of those things intimidated me. They were just challenges to face. And I saw over and over other grown men crying, scared. You throw some of these guys in a pool with full combat load on them, and they're terrified. Ask them to climb an 80-foot tower and jump over the other side and slide down, and they're terrified. And none of those physical things scared me because I felt very comfortable in my own skin. And that's what martial arts does. Martial arts is like, if you think of your body as a car and as your mind the driver of that car, most people are still 16-year-old drivers that are very nervous. But martial arts, the constant left side, right side, move this way, move this way, move this way, move this way. It's like taking an advanced driver's course for your body, which lets your mental self become very confident, which lets your emotional self become very calm. And so anything they'd ask me to do physically, okay, yeah, I can do that. And so that was just an advantage I think I've had a lot.
So I actually like to just have my thoughts and mind together as I'm thinking about the guest. And one of the questions leads right into this. Can that toughness be taught? Because
Absolutely.
you and I, so these are the great discussions you have because we come from a different angle.
Right.
I knew you'd say absolutely because of your past exposure, but you also have kids who had a very tough dad, and they come out just in shambles. They just come out in shambles, right? It's the incredible parents create a crackhead. It's the shitty parents creating a Harvard grad. There's really no rhyme or reason, and we always talk about past lives. And to me, and we'll get your answer. To me, you came into this life a tough motherfucker, and you had a tough dad, and this was your Dharma, and your dad refined it. Your dad made you and your dad and your experiences made damn sure you hit your full potential, which a lot of people miss, including myself. But go ahead.
Yeah. We've talked about that a lot. You can walk in and tell one kid you'll never be able to do 10 push-ups. And that kid will literally dislocate his shoulders trying. And you can tell another kid, use the same tone, same look, same expression, same environment, you'll never be able to do 10 push-ups. And that kid will go home and sit in his room and never try to do a push-up again. And so you and I both, I think we absolutely agree that part of your consciousness, your existence, your journey on this planet, you bring something with you that's yours from somewhere before, in my opinion. And I've watched it, like you said, a dozen times. I've got triplets in my school right now. So if it's nature or nurture, these three kids should be similar. Like if it's nature and it's DNA, these kids should be similar. If it's nurture and it's environmental and the parents are the same age and they have the same resources, then the kids should be somewhat similar. And these three kids are as opposite as they could possibly be. And so really the only possible reason for that can be is that we do have a soul that existed before this life. In my almost half century on this planet, I'm convinced that we have souls. That's how I was able to recognize Charlie. The first time I saw him, I believe it's what I call recognizing someone. And I recognized, Charlie. Can it be taught? No one shows up to the Marine Corps boot camp, and steps on the yellow footprints and they say, oh, sorry, you're not warrior enough for us to go back home. No, they're going to spend 3 months, breaking you down, building you up, and turning you into as good of a Marine as possible. But I do think part of me came down as a warrior. And I think it was Plato and Aristotle that discussed the four types of people, right? Like there's the artists, the merchants, the craftsmen, and the warriors. And they have corresponding value systems. So what that means, if you're a craftsman, what makes you feel purposeful and alive is building and fixing stuff, like working on an engine or building a house. If you're an artist, what makes you feel purposeful and alive is bringing art and beauty into the world. Dance, song, literature, poetry, philosophy, If you're a merchant, you like closing deals. You like, building empires. You like writing laws. You like, creating structure and order in society and making money. And then the warrior class is that class that we feel a strong, innate desire to serve a purpose greater than our own existence. We feel a strong need to defend those that can't defend themselves. We feel a strong need to prepare ourselves to be able to defend ourselves and our loved ones. And you see, like, and they're the ones that have a really hard time in, like, our general educational system, right? Like, this kid was hardwired to run through the forest for 3 days, kill a deer and drag it back so that the tribe could eat, and then you look at other kids in the school. I mean, they not only would never want to do that, they couldn't physically do it. And we don't yet understand why some of us come down with this packaging. Like, why is this person innately a craftsman? And why is this person innately a warrior? And also, we know you're never totally one person. Like, you're 80% merchant, you're 20% craftsman. There's usually a combination of some of them. And I'm also discovering as I age, it might be something that changes with age. Like, in my 20s, I didn't care about making money. I wanted to serve a purpose. I wanted to serve the Marine Corps. I wanted to open a martial arts school. I wanted to help people learn to master themselves so that they could have good lives. But now that I'm going into my 50s, suddenly closing deals and making money is becoming increasingly more important to me. So there may be something as well as age, your human age, as well as your soul age. I don't know if that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I I think it's a combination of everything. The more that comes out, it's the example of a 3-year-old playing Beethoven.
Right.
My
Where
question
did that come from?
my question is always, was his parents training him at 1 and 2 while he was potty training and trying to walk, like just throwing in a
Yeah.
couple hours of piano? All of a sudden he rips out Beethoven. So the
Yeah.
past life thing is it's just real. I mean, I've never experienced a near death experience, but when you find out that hundreds of millions of people have, and you listen to every one of them and they're identical, you just you don't have to experience something to understand it's real. You don't have to
Not if you're intelligent, and if you're intelligent, you have a little bit of a creative thinking mind, you have a little bit of imagination, then you can understand.
no, and then you start to understand consciousness. You understand infinity. You understand how that works. You understand where all this all came from, and anything, absolutely anything is possible. And you also get into thoughts and where they come from because they're not ours. And we think Lucas with Star Wars was creative. We think of all these people who are very creative. They have a creativity. Their brain is wired in a way to discover what that is, but that's just what's out in consciousness. That's what's out in the universe. That's what's going on. That's real.
Yeah.
All those sci-fi movies are just a coming attraction. They're getting us ready for what's out there. Um, so yeah, so the being taught thing. Um, I've always wished that I had a little bit tougher parents. I always wished that I had some physical training at a younger age, so I was tougher. I even when I was going through the really dark times, which you were a part of during those years, I was always thinking of either coming with you and doing some training, or going with my friend, the UFC guy Josh Berkman, going and doing some wrestling. And I never dipped into that. Part of me, if my ego was kicking in, I'd say it's just because it's not part of my path. If the fear and the honesty kicks in, it's because I was fearful of being hurt, of doing something that would hurt me. I've never been in a fight. I'm a decent sized guy. I'm 6'2", 225, 230, and I've never been in a fight. And I always had Josh Berkman and all these really tough guys behind me in high school and after that. And I'd always talk us out of a fight. I never hit anyone, never been hit, always talked my way out of it. Um,
Well, and I would argue that's probably part of your, you know, um, nonviolence is a fantastic way to go through life. My wrestling coach, Jay Lawson, one of my greatest heroes, was a huge pacifist and was actually quite disappointed in me when I joined the Marine Corps. Um, and I think, blessed are the peacemakers. I mean, I think they're an absolutely invaluable member to our society, and we need them desperately to keep the warriors from running chaos around the world. Like, we don't want a world full of warriors. That would be a terrible world. Like, and there's a reason we're always the smallest percentage of a society. with some small exceptions, like maybe Sparta. Um, but no, I think you being around to be that philosophical peacemaker to like, hey guys, violence is an option, but why not use our minds? Let's sit here and talk this through. Let's see if there's a better solution than violence, because violence is the lowest form of conflict resolution. I mean, that it's the lowest form, and martial artists, why did, Mr. Miyagi asked the Karate Kid, well, why do you train to fight? Then he's like, well, I train so I don't have to fight. And I think that's one of the things that just the advantages of being a trained martial artist is, since you know that you can fight, it gives you the confidence and calmness to see the other solutions, where a lot of other guys will revert to fighting quickly because they are scared, and because they are fearful, and because they're all insecure,
Sure.
And they want to prove who they are and make themselves known. But proving who yourself through violence is one of the most base versions of a human being.
Sure. And one of the things that I have started really paying attention to are those combinations, such as your wrestling coach, probably tough as nails and a pacifist.
Yeah.
Right. I have a little bit of that. Actually, I've got a lot of that combination in me, where I've enjoyed the philosophical. I enjoy philosophy. I enjoy Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta, Adyashanti, all these incredibly peaceful, calm individuals. I understand what my teacher taught me. I've understood stuff that very few people on this planet have. And most people would look at that, and when they hear, like with the soccer parents, or if I meet someone for the first time, or someone I've worked with for years, hear that they read my book, or they watch this, or they listen to me talk about consciousness, meditation, everything else, it just doesn't click to them. So I guess I like these combinations because I am one. Because if you were to think how I helped people, telling someone that's the dumbest motherfucking thing I've ever heard of when they're trying to figure out something spiritually, that's a combination, right? Because you remember, yeah, it's just who I am. I've tried. You saw me try to be like my teacher. You saw me try to be calm. You saw me try to be cool, calm, and collective when I was talking about stuff and calming my voice and being relaxed. And that was not me. That was not me. And through all this meditation, through everything, ungodly amounts of meditation, ungodly amounts of Shaktipat and energy healing, psychedelics, I tried everything. And this part of me, this aggression, this passion, this thing that I still have trouble with, never left. There's not a single ounce of it that was ripped out of my soul.
Well, I think and good, and the reason why that's so important to good is because, like, for example, I coach a men's rehab group 3 times a week in the morning now, and I get there, and when I get there to train these guys, I'm yelling, and I'm challenging them, and I'm provoking them, and I'm encouraging them. And the reason why I do that is I'm trying to wake up their warrior spirit. And there are so many people that you could not connect with if you didn't have that passionate energy, aggressiveness. Because, if I walk into the class and go, "Good morning, classroom. You're all very special. You're all doing very good. I think you're all amazing." A large percentage of that classroom just tuned me out. And if you come at me with that type of coaching or motivation or inspiration or philosophy or wisdom, I'm going to turn you out. I'm not interested in what you have to say anymore. And so strength requires strength to evoke a certain amount of emotion. I'm glad you brought this up, because it's something I've been talking about, where right now there's kind of I guess this has been around for a long time, but there's this trend right now where people believe if your argument is not dispassionate, it's not true. And so, like in politics, you see this a lot right now. There's people who feel like...
Explain that.
So in classical, traditional English courtrooms and the courts and philosophy, you had to be able to present your information, but you had to do it dispassionately. You had to do it from a place of calm. Oh. And if you expressed your argument with passion and vigor and excitement,
we're trying to cover.
Right. And right now, especially, this is a dangerous argument, because just because you can say something calmly doesn't mean you're right.
Those people terrify.
Just because you can say something very passionately doesn't mean you're necessarily wrong. And people need to start remembering that. Like this, a scary example is Hitler. Hitler was an amazing speaker, but he did it with aggression and passion and power. He could memorize audiences. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we're a little bit scared of it still, is we think passion persuades, and it can. People follow me because I'm passionate. You're a very passionate conversationalist and coach and mentor, and I think that's a positive thing. And I think for the people in academia right now who really have a problem with people who give intellectual property with passion, well, they must be wrong or hiding something or trying to be persuasive to mislead. That's absolutely not true. You can be a very passionate coach, Vince Lombardi, who yells and coaches and motivates and be 100% accurate. And you can be very calm, cool, dispassionate conversationalist and be just as misleading and uses just as much sophistry to use clever words, but to lead you to a false conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love that you're passionate about things. And I've seen you go through your more, I'm gonna be very zen, very calm, and I'm gonna discuss things from a very calm place. I'm glad you've kept that side of you. I think that's an important part of your message.
Well, one of the things, kind of like when I was younger, I joked to my parents that I thought I was adopted.
Is that what?
I thought I was adopted.
Oh, okay, I remember that. Yeah.
But just joking. As I got older, I'm like, why would I say that, right? And then come to find out, when I was older, there was something to that. I wasn't adopted. We won't get into the story, but there was something to that.
Right.
So that to me is a great example of when I'm calm with someone and I allow them to say something that I know if I was confident, I'd be like, shut the fuck up. That is not right. I feel weak. I feel guilty in a sense that I didn't speak up. When I'm 100% on and confident, my worries go away, my fears go away. I'm incredibly clear. I know that whatever I'm talking to with that person is helping them. It's helping me. I know it's part of who I'm supposed to be. I know deep down that my struggles, my depression, my darkness, me not having what I want is directly tied to me being weak in a sense. And I know people will listen and be like, that's a poor choice. No, it's a weakness for me because I always back off. I will get very confident around people I know who can handle it. But I know that when I was doing my best, I believe, when I was doing my best to help others and I would still hear from them years later, just simply saying thanks. It wasn't when I was calm. It was when I would grab them and say, holy shit, you really think what you just thought is why you're going through what you're going through. Let's talk about the mind. Let's talk about where those thoughts, like when I'm really confident about that, it really helps. And when I'm confident, just a direct, more recent, very recently, had a very good day, very confident day. And I wanted to go to a lot of individuals I knew and just say, you know what? I've been timid for the last decade. I'm sick of it. I'm sick and tired of watching you lift weights and still be fat. I'm sick and tired of listening to you complain about your life and not doing anything about it. I'm going to change it. I'm going to do something about it. You're going to come. You're going to come with me, and we're going to change that. I know from my teacher, from the Akashic records, even in my less confident days, I've heard it enough that my consciousness, my energy, my expansion is gigantic. I remember my teacher telling me one time, we were staying in a hotel when he was moving, and he said, your consciousness fills up these 3 city blocks. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me with my depression. He's like, at some point it will, when you figure out why. So I know my energy, I know the power I have, but I've always been so timid in using it. And when that confidence is there, I'll call those people up and say, yeah, trust me, I'm so sick and tired of you thinking you're lifting heavy and thinking you're doing something when you're getting absolutely no results the last 2 years. Get your ass with me. Give me 2 times a week, 3 times a week. We're going to change that over the next 3 to 4 months. The next day, if something hits me hard or something's out of place or I feel a little bit of weakness, that thought process disappears. It doesn't disappear. It's there. It's drowned behind.
It diminishes
behind fears and worries. And what do we always focus on? The fears and the worries.
That's what you're talking about is actually my field of work. Is that what you're talking about is what you keep talking about when I feel confident versus when I don't feel confident. And that's exactly what the martial arts exercises do. And martial arts are not the only path to confidence, as you're using the word. But what do we do to create confidence versus unconfidence? Like what can we do to create that confident state of mind versus not being that confident state of mind? And it's what I call waking up that warrior spirit. And so what we've studied through Korean martial arts is when you're simultaneously using your intellectual self, thought of yourself that problem solves, focuses, strategizes, and using your emotional self, your resolve, your commitment, your determination, your courage, and your physical self, your muscles, your balance, your coordination, your speed. When you're using all three at the same time, you wake up what we call your choshim, your authentic self. And when you're feeling your authentic self, it's incredibly empowering and you feel confident. So we believe through martial arts study, you can, by doing martial arts, you can create that level, that zone, that flow. That's a term one of my colleagues and mentors uses, Dr. Jackson. He wrote a whole book like how do you create flow, which is another way to describe what we're talking about. Confidence is a word, but I think it's a limited word, and I think there's more words that can describe when you're feeling empowered, capable of saying the things that you would like to say when your authentic self is on the surface. And so some people do run a marathon and they find it. Some people climb a mountain and they find it. There's different ways of finding it. Martial arts is just a very effective, efficient way to do it. Like we don't always have 5 hours to climb the mountain or go run a marathon or surf a great wave, or lots of different ways that you can experience it. Even crushing, a softball and watching it fly over the fence, you get that jolt of oxytocin, like, man, I feel good about myself. You see men, they get addicted to it on the golf course. They go to the golf course. Why? Are you really telling me that golf is that exciting? No, but when you sit there and you crush that perfect hit and you see that ball drive 380 yards, you feel empowered. You feel awesome. That makes you like that feeling because now that authentic self's coming to the surface and you feel strong. And so that's what I do through martial arts is constantly try to teach people, hey, it's simple. I'm going to teach you this elbow smash. And you're going to work on this elbow smash and you're going to think about it. You're going to start to move. And then I'm going to hold up this pad and you're going to crush this pad of this elbow smash. And when you crush it, you see the paddle rock back like, man, I did that. I'm strong. And then, I hold up a couple of, boards or a brick. And you smash a brick with your elbow. You smash a brick with your boards. You fit that empowerment just surges to the surface. And it doesn't go away for X amount of time. And that's something we don't understand. Like we do some martial arts, you feel empowered, you feel strong, your authentic self comes to the surface. Now the Air Force is calling you're now what we call a better decision maker. And so what the Air Force is doing with this now is if you take a bunch of F-35 pilots and you wake them up in the morning and you feed them breakfast and you take them to the classroom and you start teaching them tactics, their brain and its level of stimulation is going to take that information in a certain specific way. You take the same group of F-35 pilots and you take them to the yard and you have them do some push-ups and some pull-ups and push each other around a little bit, start yelling and screaming and wake up that warrior spirit. The brain is now excited at a certain level. The way the neurotransmitters are firing are totally different now. Now when you give them information, their brain literally can receive it on a higher level, a faster level, and they become what's called better decision makers. It's why when our grandparents went to the school, the first thing they did is they took them to the yard and they did 20 to 40 minutes of calisthenics. They got the brain excited to a certain level, and then they try to teach them math. Well, because that empowered I can do it feeling is now at the surface, while they're trying to learn math, there's a competitiveness to it. They want to learn the math. They want to figure it out because it's challenging their authentic self. But our poor kids, we wake them up, feed them a bowl of sugar, take them to school still tired, sit them down, and then try to teach them math. Well, there's no competitive juice. There's no empowerment. That authentic self is nowhere around. It's not awake. That warrior spirit is asleep. Now they feel dumb. Now they feel stupid. Now they don't want to learn. There's no motivation. And so, what you're talking about is like when I feel confident, my authentic voice comes to the surface and I feel comfortable saying to people what I really want to say to them. But when I don't feel confident, my authentic self shrinks and diminishes and becomes less certain. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's not my place to share or coach that person. Maybe they don't need me, and you wither back. And so that's what I spend all my time is how do we create that constant level of choshim, of authentic self that always feels comfortable and powerful, or as much as they possibly can. Because I truly don't believe you're meant to live in that realm. I don't believe the authentic self is meant to be 100% of the time, all the time. Um, I think there's a reason it withdraws. I think there's a reason it subsides. Um, and I do think we need to learn how to provoke it and wake it and bring it to the surface, but also when to let it rest.
Everyone talks about love being the highest level of frequency and vibration constantly, right? That's just the way it is. That's the newest construct in the spiritual path. I don't remember his name, but more and more people are starting to understand that the highest level actually is authenticity. And that authenticity is not love. It includes love because love embodies everything, but that authenticity means me being passionate.
I
You
like
be
it. I like it. It's part of the
you
recipe.
being tough. You being tough. Steve Jobs being an asshole, and Steve Jobs is such a great example because the common man looks at that and says, if he wasn't such an asshole, he wouldn't have died so young. Okay.
Possibly.
No.
Possible.
That's not even a discussion to me because when the local news is interviewing a 102-year-old lady and they ask what her secret is, and it's a pound of bacon, a pack of cigarettes, and a fifth of Jack every day, you start to realize that there's karma and dharma involved in everyone. And no matter if Steve Jobs was a Buddhist monk and decided not to invent the iPhone, he probably actually most likely would have still died in the 50s of cancer. Right? The healthiest human being can get hit by a bus at 35. A 4-year-old has cancer. Like when
Yeah.
we start talking about that, just stop. I remember when a good friend of mine used to always send me a picture of the Dalai Lama and a picture of Bill Gates. And he's like, look how young the Dalai Lama looks, and he's 80, and Bill Gates is in his 40s, and he looks older.
Oh, I love like all the before and after president pictures, what
Yeah,
the
yeah,
president looked like, and then 4 years later, what he looks like. I mean, it's
yeah.
dramatic.
Yeah, so that's one thing. But when it comes to that, we're always looking for examples to back up our narrative. If we're Democrat, we're watching CNN. If we're Republican, we're watching Fox. It's just constant. Um, but
I
back,
can't watch either one of them.
no. I listen to people talk about that, and I am blown away how childish we are when there's still 130 million people who are very passionate about voting for one side or the other when they realize
Yeah.
it's identical. It blows
Yeah.
me away every 4 years. We're
The
still doing
fact
this.
that one side still thinks one side is more right than the other is still baffling to me. Like I don't
Is,
understand
is that not insane?
mindset.
Is
And
that
it's truly insane that people think because different people have different solutions to different problems and different priorities, one group is better than the other. Like I don't know how any rational human beings like, and it surprised me because I have several friends that I consider very wise, very intelligent, very educated, very experienced, and they still haven't unraveled the riddle of politics. And I just it
well, it's infuriating to me because as you see by the bottom left hand corner of this image, Truth Has No Size with the book and the podcast. That's all I discuss continuously, and I am on such a island when it comes to these discussions. Um, it's kind of upsetting. It's
it you
it's upsetting
it,
to see people sitting back talking to me very passionately about, but you see what Trump's doing, but you see what Kamala's doing, but you see what the Democrats are doing, but you see what the Republicans did when they were in office. And every time I am very calm and I say, you do realize that it's the same from both sides. Not only do I not get a discussion or an argument, they freeze and they walk. Like there was a guy at the gym who came to me and asked who I was voting for, and I said neither. And both sides are crazy. He's like, "Oh, so you're like my son? You're an anarchist?" I'm like, "Fuck your son. I'm not like your son either." And he,
wait. That's a pretty big leap.
well, no, that's where we go because of the constructs of being human. It's either right or wrong. It's either Catholic or atheist. It's Republican or Democrat. If you're not one of those two, then you want to break the system, whatever it is. And I said, no, I'm none of those. Do you not understand the division that's created? You are very upset with the Democrats for what they do. You are doing the same thing on the Republican side. And he just kind of shook his head and said, kind of laughed and walked away. And I grabbed him 5 minutes later and I just tried to just simply talk to him. I wasn't arguing with him. I just said, do you understand kind of what I'm saying? Um, and ever since that day, everything about him changed. He doesn't know how to talk to me anymore because he doesn't know if he's in an argument, he wants to lean against a wall. So if there's a
Yeah,
wall to lean against, we're fine.
right.
If you're on the same side and you can stand together, we're fine. if you go to lean up against someone and argue and there's no wall and you fall through,
Very
you,
uncomfortable.
it's very uncomfortable. There's no reason to have a discussion.
Yeah.
And but I will tell you, I did a couple episodes ago. I did a great episode with Candace, who's the Akashic record, and I asked her some questions after our call, and she said that truth has no sides is going to be very, very important in the next 12 to 18 months with those shifts happening. So that's why we're here today with you, and we'll continue to do this. But being neutral doesn't get you a lot of places on this planet. You either need to be very heavy one side or the other, and then you can have tens of millions of followers and then tens of millions of enemies. But when you're neutral, what do you do?
Yeah. No, and that's what you do is you find other human beings. You
Yeah.
find other people who found neutrality. You found other people that there's usually a modern answer to most problems. You know, I love what you're saying, and the truth has no sides is going to be very important and valuable work because during the days of Socrates, it was Socrates versus the Sophists, right? Socrates believed that you had to really you know you couldn't choose left or right. You had to look at all of it and break it down. And the Sophists came in and made truth relative. So the Sophists, they could make right and wrong relative. And Socrates is like, no, you can't. There's right and there's wrong. And the Sophists are like, no, you have to make it is relative based off your experiences in your society. And that's what the word sophistry mean. And we need the truth has no sides needs to help the word sophistry come back to common usage, where sophistry is the use of intelligent and clever arguments to mislead. And that's what every politician does. And they have to do it because once one side does it, the other side has to do it to stay competitive. Churchill did it. Churchill told, the English people that they were winning the war. Churchill told the English people, don't worry, we're going to win, when they were really badly losing.
Yeah.
But he misled the population to create a certain outcome.
Yep.
Hitler did the same thing. Hitler used a strong argument to persuade a group of people to his way of thinking.
Yep.
Anyone in politics, I, as a master martial artist, as I lead my students, I don't mislead them, but I do create a narrative and a conversation to lead them to a certain way of thinking. No one who teaches and leads other doesn't participate in this challenge in one way or another. The tricky part is, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to persuade people to thinking right? Are you trying to persuade people to thinking left? Or are you trying to convince people that thinking right or left is a very low grade of thinking, and to improve your grade of thinking to get to the point where, anyone involved in politics has an agenda, and that agenda is supported by whoever is funding them. And, maybe you get lucky. Like I really like RFK, and I really think he is trying to do a lot of good things. And if he's lucky, he'll get to do maybe 20% of what he really wants to do, while doing 80% of what the people who fund him want him to do. And that's just what people have to get back. And so the truth has no sides. And why that's so valuable is, once you remember again the simple examples of, hey, if I hold this square up to you and I ask you what you see, you're going to say, hey, I see a square. And you're going to fight to the death that you see a square. But if I hold it this way, and you're looking at it from this angle and you see a straight line, but this person over here sees a square, the truth, due to their perspective of it, these people will go to war and fight and kill over it. And you have to bring this message to the world, where you remind people that, first of all, even what you think is true is only your perspective of that truth. And someone else could be looking at the exact same information you have from another point of view, and they're going to fight you to death over it. But once we realize we're both talking about the same shape, but from a different angle, we can start to get along and communicate and problem solve, because we do have big problems that do need big solutions. And we're never going to find those big solutions as long as we're addressing it from a right or left agenda.
No. And it's been that way forever. So there's a part of me that wonders if that's just simply part of the human experience. And
Human nature. And
yeah,
human nature.
That's just what we're about, because we come from a very incredible place that near-death experience people talk about. And we came here to understand what we were not. To come down here to understand contrast, to understand physicality, limitations, because we don't have limits up there, down there, wherever you want to call it. So as much as the incarnations of people could be 20 lifetimes of being staunch Catholic. Jesus is the way, and then maybe on life 21, they start to question. Not that he wasn't real or that his teachings weren't real, but is the Catholic Church really doing the right thing, right? So they just start to question it. In this incarnation, for me, it was very, very, very quick because it was almost every at the beginning with my teacher, it was almost every year something dramatically shifted in me where I was hell bent on this is the way. And then a year later, I'd be like, holy shit, how blind was I? And then it started speeding up every 6 months, every month, every week, every year, every day. So now that's part of the reason where I've backed off with people because I was so built off of a certain specific way of helping people. Now I don't have a way. I don't have a construct in my head that says, if you do this, you will get this. Because I've seen too many examples of, if you do this, you may get this, but someone else will get this, and this other person will hate it, but this person will love it. I can't lie to
Yeah.
myself. I can't lie to myself anymore. So when I
Yeah.
see really, really, really confident people, they terrify me. They really terrify me of certain things of what they're teaching, kind of like very staunch Republicans or very staunch Democrats. Um, but two things back to debates and uh, different perspectives. The one thing I love about Plato was he said something very debate is a verbal sport with winners and losers. As such, it is less about the truth and more about who looks and sounds the best.
Right.
The other side is not about being right, it's if they can prove the other side wrong. And that's how we're basing who we vote off and how we move our future, and we wonder why our future's so fucked.
Well, and it's why you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
No, that's why I consider myself a philosopher and not a psychologist or a counselor or a therapist because I don't believe in set equations where A plus B equals C necessarily every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the labels and the categories we try to come up with, you know, a debate, you're right. Someone's going to try to be wrong and someone's going to try to be wrong, right? And you're going to use sophistry and use Reddit to try to persuade people to your way of thinking. Where a true philosopher isn't trying to persuade anyone to think a certain way. A true philosopher is let you and I sit down and converse together. While we talk together, let's see if we can get somewhere in this conversation. Let's see if we can elevate our minds. I remember, in my earlier years, I remember I would talk to certain people, like John Hess is one of them. And I remember when I would have a conversation with John Hess, I would literally become smarter. I would say things while talking to him that I would have never thought of by myself. And you and I have had conversations where you and I would sit down and talking to the dodo or going for a walk, something, and I'll say things that I haven't even thought for decades or years, or maybe I've never thought of before, or a concept will come together that I've never enjoyed the way I've enjoyed it right that minute. And that's, to me, that's what a good philosophical conversation where I've never tried to persuade you to my way of thinking. Um, I've tried to share our conversations together so that we could both go on a journey together and both learn from each other and expand our minds. And I think that's the difference between a philosophical discussion and a debate. Um, you know, I might be a little bit arrogant there. I guess I should say I'm not going to say I've never tried to persuade you to my way of thinking, because I think I have seen you in times when you were hurting or in pain or in darkness, and I wanted to give you some reassurance that you were going to be fine and you were going to make it. And you were going to discover these things. Um, but I would say I was trying to motivate,
Yeah.
not persuade. I wasn't trying to get you to stop thinking the way you thought and think the way I think, but rather to encourage you to continue to believe in the way you think and that you are going to get where you want to go.
I'm thinking of that movie where oh, that bald actor Simmons, and he's teaching a drummer. He's a musical teacher.
Drumline?
No,
Oh,
it's the one where he just destroys this kid because he sees such potential in him. and just beats the shit out of the kid. His hand's bloody. He basically ruins the kid until the last scene in the movie to bring that potential out. He's just a complete, saying he was a complete asshole to this kid is the biggest understatement on the planet. It's a great movie. J.K.
Oh,
Simmons, J.K. Simmons,
I
that.
don't think I've seen this one.
Well, I'm just thinking about that. Where again, when you are ignorant and you truly believe your way is the way, life is so much easier,
Oh yeah, for
right?
sure.
Oh my God, because you've taken this infinite universe and you believe you know. So this is the way, and this is how it worked for me. So I'm going to teach thousands, millions. This is the way. So when I hear you talk about, I tried to persuade you, I know you did, and that's a good thing. When I'm talking to someone who's having a bad day, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to persuade to tell them it's going to be okay. That's perfectly okay. Uh, then there's the extreme of J.K. Like there's so many ways to help individuals, and some need a very tough dad because they came into this incarnation with your Dharma, right? I had a tough dad, and it turned me differently. It changed me differently in sports and kind of cracked my confidence in a sense. I went the opposite way. I didn't gain my confidence until I was older, and the external factors of having a successful business and people actually liking to be around me that changed me. Yours was built internally, mine was built externally. The main point of this part of the discussion is there's part of me sometimes that I'm just like, I wish I was still ignorant because I was so confident. I really had an easier time with direction. I had an easier time in what I thought I knew, how I could help people, how I discuss stuff. And even in my book, there's a part of one of the chapters where I apologize to a lot of the people I've spoken with over the years because of how arrogant I was. Now knowing what I know, that I'm assuming that discussion and advice I gave them really helped because a lot of them still say thanks and appreciate me. But me personally, I'm like, holy shit, there's no way I would have told you to do that now. So, so being human, the contradictory of human, right and wrong, up and down, what's better? Is me being that arrogant, confident person that was helping people better, or this, in a sense, lost, not so confident, no direction type of human being who has a hard time figuring out his way now? And
I mean, I think what is not better or worse. I think they're different gears. I think
different.
they're different, different gears. And so, I think first of all, anyone who motivates and leads others goes through. It's a natural and necessary chapter to get to the apologetic state where you go, oh my God, what have I done? And these people didn't run me out. I mean, I founded my school at 24 years old. And I mean, I'm taking people's money to teach their kids and themselves at 24 years old. Like, what 24-year-old should be teaching anyone anything? But I have, students. I've got second generations and third generation students now that come back and say, Master Parnell, you saved my life, or you saved my student's life, or you saved my son's life. Back when I was even at that young teaching, and one of my dearest students, Kyle, who's passed away a few years ago, I got him when he was 14, and when I was teaching him, I was raw. I mean, people tell stories of how I would teach back then, and I would never do that. And they go, oh, you sure did, sir. And I mean, and I was having a conversation with him a couple of years ago when he'd come back after the Marines, and we were teaching together, and he saw how much gentler I taught now, and how I could still give the message, but more gently. And I'm kind of like, I kind of miss the old Master Parnell. I kind of miss the old, hard, mean, SOB. And he goes, Master Parnell, to be honest, I don't know if I would listen to you today the way you teach. The way you taught me back then was the way I needed to hear it. And the message you're teaching now, like, it's a good message, but it probably wouldn't have resonated with me back then. And so I think every leader, every teacher, since we're on our journeys as well, the example I give to a lot of people, if you've seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, there's the old wise leader, Oogway the turtle, and everything is all as it should be. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Things will unravel in the correct amount of time. And then there's the younger leader, Sifu, and he's just yelling and berating and putting people down, and you're not good enough. And that's what led me to believe that the correct recipe of parenting is when you have one parent telling you, I expect more from you. You're not meeting up to your potential. And the other parent is giving you that unconditional love. I love you the way you are. You're good enough. You're amazing just the way you're very special. And when you get the right amount, and I think that's what my parents gave me. I think my parents gave me the exact right amount of I expect more from you. You're a Parnell. You carry the family name. You're my firstborn son. This is not good enough. Combined with exact same time with your unique creation in the universe, you're a very special soul. You're amazing. You're unique. I love you. And I think when you can create that exact message, and that's why I think a lot of great leaders have apprentices. And when you look at different organizations like the Marine Corps, the senior drill instructor, his job is to be daddy and and nice to you almost. Not really nice, but he's who you felt comfortable with. And then there's your thrash hat, your junior, and his job is to make you get scared every single time you see him walk by. And that's why I think, that recipe of when you can find the right recipe, the right ingredients level of what's better, not what's worse. Because even today, like I was teaching at my school yesterday, I was lighting students up. And I think that's where you kind of get to. I think when you really become a master motivator, really become a master teacher, is when you can look at your friend, your loved one, your student, your teammate, the person you're coaching, and you can look at them and know, oh, right now they need Oogway. All is as it should be. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're a unique creation. You're unfolding exactly the way you were meant to. Or looking at them going, this guy needs a little bit of tough love right now. I'm gonna thrash you. We're gonna do some push-ups. I'm gonna make you run up that mountain. I'm gonna make you chop wood and haul water. And you know what? This isn't good enough, and I expect more from you. And I think that's really where as a true master, when you can know which message is gonna be the most effective to help that person in that moment on their journey. And I messed it up constantly. I messed it up all the time. I still do it wrong. So I've still got a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's constant. It's constant. And just like that movie we talked about, J.K. Simmons, like that's the only way he knew. He only knew one direction.
Right.
That comes back to about 30 minutes ago. That was who he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
People will go into that and say, well, he was really trying to cover up childhood anger and trauma and everything. Okay, fine. Okay. That's just who he was. Like Steve Jobs, there's been so many movies made on him as to why he was the way he was, because he was adopted, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many things that impacted me, so many things that impacted you, so many things that impacted all 8 billion people on this planet. It sounds to me like the job of the individual soul is to figure that out and see what is best for them. And
100%. You've heard me say a couple of times. Sorry, go ahead.
I had a lot of external softness. A lot of people building me up over a certain amount of time, and I blew that up. So the universe said, well, okay, that's it. That's not what you're looking for. We'll give you the polar opposite. We'll make life stressful, dynamic. We'll give you a messenger that is the polar opposite of building you up, someone who's going to tell you the absolute truth. Like when people hear absolute truth, there's one, but then there's that deep, dark truth that you thought you were only going to take to the grave that no one saw.
Yeah.
That apparently that's part of my story and my path, to learn that, so that it's building me into a stronger human being that can handle all of the stuff I want. Because the stuff I want, it has not come yet because I wasn't ready for it. And to get ready for it, I needed to get my ass kicked. And one more thing that I don't want to forget, because I like to write notes while you're talking, about perspective. You've heard the story. I think you told it to me. We've talked about it many times. The 9 blind men who touch an elephant.
Right.
The master says, what is enlightenment? And one says, well, it's this long stringy thing. And one says, it's this flappy ear. And the other one says, it's this long trunk. And, oh, it's the hoof. Oh, it's the big fat belly. So 9 people saw enlightenment drastically different, just simply based off their perspective. So that's a great story about that. And again, that's so simple. And when you and I talk about it, or anyone talks about it, all 8 billion people can understand that story and say, that makes perfect sense. Fuck Trump. What?
Right? Both sides.
We understand the perspective. To each their own. I don't like Kamala. I hate Democrats. Catholics are idiots. Can you believe an atheist believes there's no God? It's like, Holy shit, man! You understand? You did not
All those
understand the
labels,
story.
all those. And the fun thing is, I talked about this a lot recently, is every one of those words are a made up word. Thor in one of the Avengers movies, they're sitting there talking to him. Yeah, and Thor's talking to the little raccoon, and he says a fancy word like nebulera, and the raccoon goes, "That's a made up word." And Thor, without that, goes, "All words are made up." And so, how I use this productively in my classes, like I'm teaching a bunch of men going through rehab, and I say, "Okay, say the word veteran. Does that have a positive or negative connotation in our society today?" And everyone says positive. Okay, great. Say the word addict. Does that word have a positive or negative connotation in today's society? And they're like, oh, negative. I'm like, okay, but so I've got my buddy down in Utah County. I think he was a dentist and a bishop. One of the nicest dudes, best dudes. Everyone loved him. Thought he was an amazing guy. Was an amazing guy. Is an amazing guy. Broke his foot. Doctor prescribed OxyContins. Gets addicted. Loses everything. Loses his job, his family, his life, his reputation, loses everything. Goes through his rehab, gets his life put back together, and he's an amazing person again. Are you really trying to tell me the word addict can describe that journey? Take the word veteran. Many people before they join the military are idiots, and they're selfish, and they lie, and they cheat, and they steal. They steal and they cheat. And they get in the military, and they do all the same things. And then they get out of the military, and they're still a terrible human being. But now they can be called a veteran, and they get all this respect and discounts and free meals and Veterans Day. And so, the word Republican, that's a made up word. We try to make up a word to try to describe a group of people with a certain way of thinking. Catholics. Inside the Catholic Church, there's so many different sects. You can't even say Catholic and come up with any real definition of what that word means. When you realize that every word we made up to try to describe a certain group of people, and realize that's an impossibility, because every human is so unique and so different on such a different journey with so many different past lives and future lives. And to try to come up with almost any word to try to describe anything becomes so difficult, which is why it is easier to live in the construct. But
Well,
we have to communicate. We have to get along. So we do have to agree on some words and what they mean.
yeah,
We just have to have a lot less faith in what every word what we think it means.
and what do very intelligent people do when you start having this discussion? They will take a word, English word, and drop it back to the Latin understanding
Right.
or
Right.
the Hebrew understanding.
The first invention of the word.
Like,
It's still an
like,
invention of a word. You still made it up to try to describe something. Like you can't use the word Republican and have it describe an individual. You can describe a group, but it doesn't describe an individual way of thinking. I happen to agree with when if we're sticking with the politics, the last election is when I really kind of went down the rabbit hole, and I went and I Googled what is the true definition of a Republican. Again, a made up word. And the definition that I found for that word was a Republican is someone who believes that the majority should protect the rights of the minorities. So the strong should protect the weak. Okay, I identify with that. What's the definition of Democrat? The Democrats believe the majority should rule. So if 70% of the population believes no guns, the smaller, weaker group that wants guns, they should agree and not have guns. Well, wait a second. That's the majority, the strong group, not honoring the wishes of the weaker, smaller group. I don't agree with that. And so by those definitions, I'm 100% Republican. I believe that's the people who have the most power and strength need to protect the groups that don't have enough strength to enforce their own ideologies. And I don't ever think, because we both know the masses are insane. And if you're telling me the majority rules is the wisest way to determine the path forward, the majority of us aren't educated, aren't thoughtful, aren't introspective, don't think through things, don't plan carefully, don't learn from our mistakes, don't know what really makes us happy. So we're going to listen to the majority and to make decisions. So again, but these are all made up words that we try to, again, what you're talking about earlier in this life. And I'm mad because the name is escaping me. The author who wrote Dune. His name is just.
who knows? But I was just watching Dune 2 the other day. I love those movies.
So one of his greatest quotes was, life is not a mystery to solve, but a reality to experience. Well, the whole point of debate is to solve things and to make things a certain way. Like the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, whatever, they're trying to they're just trying to solve certain problems. But once you remember that life is not a problem to solve, but a reality to experience, whoa, then I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. And things are unfolding as they should be. And I don't need to have everything figured out tomorrow. I'm supposed to be enjoying today, where I'm at today, this level I am today, this version of myself today. And that's when that confidence comes out again and that authentic self comes out again and you feel balanced and centered again.
That is one thing I very much agree with is after everything I've learned, everything I've read, everything I've seen, uh, the ignorance of intelligent people, even the blindness of very enlightened people, the near-death experiences, the things I was really cut off to that my teacher didn't want me to pay attention to because it was a waste of time. In a sense, he was right, but it was also part of my experience. I needed to see it. I needed to understand it. That's all there is. Experience. Yeah. Because
that's the point.
That's only experience. Because there are people who have, like Darius Wright, he's the guy who helps people with controlled out-of-body experiences. And the shit he talks about completely upends anything you and I've ever discussed. And he experiences it continuously and helps others do it. And he's not lying. Near-death experience people are not lying. They're not lying. They're
when you say near-death experience, what do you mean exactly? Because I've had a couple what I would call near-death experiences, but I'm curious, like what you say when you mean that.
So the people that legitimately go to the other side, see beings, see
the crossover,
they actually cross over, die for 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then they come back with the because a lot of them have that, and then they come back with the veil and they don't remember. But some, you can read their books, you see them all over YouTube, you see it talked about in every religion, even atheists, and they experience the other side. They experience beings, they experience whatever they're comfortable with on that side, and they feel at home. They feel immense love. They feel right. They feel like everything's gone. And Darius and a few others also talk about that it's actually more real over there and it's more physical.
That makes perfect sense to me because
Go ahead.
I remember talking to a Russian shaman when I was in my early 20s, and I was very confused and I was very angry and I was going through a very dark time period. And a friend took me to talk to this Russian guru guy, and he had a very particular way of assessing you. He would hold a large group of colored pencils in his hand, and he had this diagram. And as he talked to you, he would randomly, without looking at, pull out a pencil and color a certain part of the diagram. And by the time he finished, he had certain colors and certain diagrams, and that would tell him about you. And this ties in perfectly with what you're talking about, these near-death experiences, because he looked at me, he goes, I know what your problem is. Which I didn't respond positively to. I'm like, you don't know what my problem is. You don't understand the depths of my soul, what the anguishes of my existence. You don't know what my problem is, but I certainly sat back and sure hit me with it. What's my problem? Because now that we can fix my problem. And he looks at me and goes, you're homesick. I'm like, you idiot. I do not miss California. I don't miss Hyde Avenue. I don't miss my family and parents. I don't miss my friends. I'm not homesick at all. He goes, no, you're not listening to me. You're homesick.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not homesick. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, you're homesick.
Mm-hmm.
You miss where everything made sense and there was harmony and there was balance and things are more real and there is more love and all the mud of life doesn't exist and you're in that glorious state or whatever you want to call it. So it makes perfect sense to me because that resonated to my very soul. Like that shook me to my core. I was immediately crying. I don't think I was shaking, but I was crying and I was like, I felt very loved and like, yeah, that's it. Like I'm down here on this plane where life is mud and hard and cold and lonely and I'm trying to find my way and I'm being tested and developed and I'm figuring out who I really am and my character is being tested, and I do miss where the test wasn't taking place. So that makes perfect sense to me that all these near-death experiences have this concept where you're home.
Yeah, and that's always made perfect sense to me, because that's the only thing I can put two and two together with, after experiencing everything I've experienced, knowing what I know, thinking that in our linear fashion, our linear construct, our linear time, that if I did this, I would be, I feel peace. Um, Having access to teachers, to people like you, to knowledge, to practitioners, to practices that everyone else is looking for, and to still feel the way I feel, that's the only explanation. I'm very homesick. And I know
Yeah,
everyone
and
says we're supposed to enjoy the small things. I get it. I get it. But my authentic self, myself that's not lying to me, is saying, why did I
I
choose?
get that, but
That's part of being human, right? I get
yeah,
that, but I miss that. I don't know where that is, because the veil is so thick, and that's part of it. Um, but I miss that. I'm very homesick.
I wonder though if that's a because I know exactly what you're talking about as exactly as I can from my body, but I wonder if that's just a little bit of confusion we're still working on, because when you're in this safe place where everything is good and you're peaceful and you're strong and you're loved, that's going to get boring at some point. Like maybe 1,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, maybe a millennial years, whatever. Eventually, you're gonna want the thrill of the hunt. You're gonna want the challenge. You're gonna want to test your mettle again. I think. Like, I wonder if that, okay, we're tired right now. We got our butts kicked recently. We're worn out. Can't we please go home? But then as soon as we get home and we catch our breath, once wrestling season ends for a few minutes, why is my image exploding with fireworks?
That's cute. I have no clue. We'll just go with it.
Cool. But for me, the end of wrestling season, I was always done wrestling. I never wanted to wrestle again. I was so sick of wrestling. I just wanted conflict to end. I wanted the training to end. I wanted to be at rest. And I would rest. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm like, where'd wrestling season go? Get me back in the fight. And so I wonder if when we're feeling that homesickness, it's just because we're exhausted, we're worn out, and we're tired, and we've given all we can give, in that moment. But I'll bet you, it kind of resonates as I'm saying it right now. I'll bet you that's a temporary feeling. And when we get fueled up, we're going to want to get back in the fight again. And we're going to want to get out there and participate again and contribute again. One of my biggest values is contributing. Um, I think that homesick feeling, uh, while incredibly real and makes sense, how long would we rest for before we wanted to be back into experience, before we wanted to be back into the mystery, before we wanted to be back into the uncertain, before we wanted to be back into exploring? Um, how long could we really just rest at peace? Um,
I'm with you, because that's exactly how I explain the other side. And that's the only, just for a lack of better description to help people, that's exactly what happened. We are up at a place, at a certain dimension, certain level. We have anything we want. It's eternal. We're in love. We're home. We feel comfortable. And that's the word I use continuously when people, we got bored.
I
We,
mean, it actually explains existence.
we got
It actually
bored.
explains why we would come down here and have a veil, right?
I that, oh, in our feeble little, tiny little perspectives, as much as we can expand them on the 3D realm with the knowledge we have, the meditations, the practices, that's where it's boiled down to me. We got
Yeah,
bored, like a 70-year-old who's retired and got sick and tired of talking to the same friends, golfing at the same golf course, drinking the same coffee, talking about the same shit, and saying, I'm going to go skydiving.
right,
That's all
right.
that's all I can think about, because
Yeah,
we were, I was taught, and many are taught on this spiritual path, that as soon as enlightenment comes, peace and bliss, and then you're home. You're with the absolute. You merge back. And then I start reading the near death, and I'm like, wait a minute. We had that. We gave it up to come here and to go right back there. What am I missing?
I mean,
What am I
yeah,
missing? What am I missing with this mountaintop bullshit, this enlightenment bullshit, this spiritual path bullshit, and to spirituality's just become a new religion.
yeah.
It's the I'm not religious, I'm spiritual shit drives me crazy.
And it's not new. It's
No,
that's
it's
been
not
in
new.
society forever.
But it's
You
the new
know,
construct with TV and media. That's the new thing.
yeah,
You leave the
it's the
corporate
buzzword.
you leave materialism behind, the corporate world behind. You're not happy, and we all are told that spirituality is going to change that. It will temporarily when you're in the
Yeah.
thick of it because it's different. Once, if you are speeding through the process, you will come back exactly where you started.
And when people relearn the word we invented, when we invented the word religion, and it's so funny because no one knows what that word means anymore. The word religion means to tie back. 1,000 years ago, you're standing on top of a hill watching sheep, and you're looking at the stars, and you see a shooting star fly across the street, and you see the clouds, and you see the mountains, and you saw your son born the other day, and you saw your grandfather die the other day, and you're like, what's my place in all this? How do I tie in to all of this? And once you ask that question, your mind makes huge expansion, and you start, how do I tie into all of this? And when people remember that's what religion is, you on your journey, figuring out how you tie into all of this, um, then the word religion won't be such a bad word anymore, right? I mean, right now that's it's a bad word in a lot of circles because it's so one-sided. You're either this religion or you're that religion, or you believe in this deity or that deity, and religion divides us now. But when people relearn what we meant when we invented that word, hey, this is your journey on how you tie into all of existence and how you contribute and how you get to play your unique special song in this great concert, then religion won't divide us again. But right now, because of politics and because of financial monetary gain, you can't have religion without money, and therefore you can't have, you can't come out and say, hey, we're a great religion, but they're also great religion. Like, you're gonna fail. Like, you won't be able to get the word out. And so
Yeah, that's
yeah, man.
it comes back to what we were talking about 30 minutes ago. Truth has no sides,
Yeah,
being neutral. You're not
right,
you're not
right.
you're not going to get far in this world of extremes and polarity.
Yeah,
But that is changing. They,
yeah,
they they talk about the people who create certain things, and then 30 years later it pops, and everyone starts doing it, and making a shit ton of money, and you're thinking about the people who really started things, and those people didn't get shit. I'm
yeah.
hoping that's not the case here because I need to I need to live in 3D world and pay bills and figure things out. But it's stressful. It's very stressful.
That's You and I have talked a lot about that. One of the hardest things about being truth seekers, and you and I have talked about this a lot. I would say arguably one of the most difficult things is really seeking how to tie back where your journey, like really trying to seek it, and then realizing you still have to get up tomorrow and chop wood and haul water. Because once you get to a certain spiritual plane or mental plane or a place of existence, chopping wood and hauling water can look very mundane and redundant, and like, that's stupid. It's a stupid way of living. Paying bills, paying taxes, doing a 9 to 5, creating wealth so that I can pay for trips to Hawaii or whatever. It seems so small when you're existing on a certain level of a spiritual high, a mental high, and going from out here through your transcendental meditation and you're existing on such a great level and being forced to come back in this world where I have to chop wood and haul water and do a job I don't like and drive in traffic that means stupid, and but that's that cynicism side of us coming out. We're like, yeah, but didn't you love watching your son play ice hockey last night? And didn't you love watching your friends play soccer last night? And didn't you truly enjoy getting to sit on that amazing ocean beach and put your feet in that amazing water? Like, and it's combining the whole equation, getting back to like, yeah, we got to get up here and seek with our minds and our emotional selves. And yeah, chopping wood and hauling water is, man, I don't like doing that. But that's the system we've created that allows us to do these things. It's a tough equation, and that's one thing that I struggle the most with is when you get to certain spiritual heights and mental awakenings and unfoldments, and then tomorrow you got to pay your taxes, and that can be crushing. Like, what's the point? I know you struggle with that a lot too.
Still do.
Yeah.
I do feel it lightening, um, getting lighter. Uh, I feel that authenticity coming back more, the confidence coming back more. Um, there's something that for some reason keeps popping into my head as we talk about experience. And let me see if I can play this through my little microphone here. Tell me if you can hear this, because I don't want to ruin this. It's of course it's the Matrix. Can you hear that? No.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. It's the scene in the Matrix where he's sitting down with the Oracle, and she says, "Do you want a piece of candy?" And he says, "You already know if I'm going to take it." She said, "It wouldn't be much of an oracle if I didn't know." "If you
Right.
already know, how can I make a choice?" She says, "Because it's not about knowing if you're going to." God, let me check this out. And I'm sorry for.
About understanding why.
Yes, it's not
Yeah.
about
Not it's
knowing.
not about the decision.
It's
It's
not
about
about
understanding
choice.
why you made the decision.
It's about understanding why you made the choice, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because I hear this all the time, and something about free will rubs me wrong. It's not that simple. Krishnamurti and a few others talked about, yes, you have free will. You have the ability to choose between a red and a blue handkerchief. You have the ability to choose between chocolate and vanilla ice cream. But what is it in you that makes you like chocolate over vanilla? So when it comes to the why, when it comes to those things that we regret, when it comes to this philosophical discussion that you and I have been doing for an hour and 30 minutes, that makes sense to me. There is free will, and we got bored, and we are here to participate. And why did you make that decision? Why did you screw that person over? Why were you kind to that person? Why is this pattern repeating continuously? Why do you always find yourself in this certain position when you know better? Kind of like locking your keys in a car. You're shutting the door as you know you're locking your keys in the car, but you still shut the door. Why did you make that decision? Were you unconscious with it? But yeah, I love that scene.
Yeah.
It's not about the choice you made. It's about understanding why.
Well, there's so many amazing philosophies in all of the Matrix movies, and each of them kind of pick on a different one. Have you watched the most recent one?
Uh-huh.
Because to that gets into choice itself is an illusion. You already know what you're going to do. If I'm walking through a parking lot and I see a kid getting dragged towards a van, I'm not going to make a choice on whether I'm going to go help that kid or not. I'm that's Of course I'm going to go help that kid. Like I already know that's going to happen. You know, and often we think we're making choices, but we're just acting out this experience of life. Our will knows what we're going to do. Um, sometimes I think it's very arrogant to look back on decisions we made and think we had a choice at all. Like, well, why did I choose to get involved with that person and destroy my life? Well, you didn't choose to get involved with that person. That person got involved. That was life. That was the mystery of life unfolding. And you were doing exactly what you're supposed to do. You were experiencing the mystery of life. And I'm not saying we never have choices. I like to believe that we have will and free will, and that we can choose. And yet, most things that you propose to me, I would argue my consciousness would already know what it's going to do. I wouldn't actually get to sit there and decide, well, am I going to do this or not? My will already knows, no, this is you, this is what you're made of, this is who you are, and this is who you've always been. Maybe this is the 10,000th version of yourself. And so you start to understand things differently. So you start to choose differently. But, you know, how much choice do we really have in the way, I know you to be, a certain kind of guy. And I know for a fact, you're someone that will help someone. I can imagine, I could create probably 1,000 different scenarios where you could look over and observe someone needed help. would argue 999 times you go. I mean, and you talk about, the courage and confidence and feeling strong or feeling weak, you know, you know, you know, I'm a warrior, and if I saw someone hurting someone else, even though I knew I may not be successful, I'm going to do something about it. I know that about myself. I've done it over and over and over in multiple environments, in multiple situations, and with multiple consequences. And, there's not an earth that exists where I couldn't see someone willfully hurting someone who couldn't protect themselves, that I wouldn't do it, that I wouldn't go help them, even if that cost me my life. Like, that's not a question I even have to ask myself. And then as you get older, you go, well, does your wife deserve losing her husband? Does your son deserve losing their father? Well, hey, if my wife or son gets to tell my story the rest of my existence, that we lost our husband going to the defense of someone who couldn't defend themselves, win, you know,
Mhm.
because you and I aren't, I mean, we're not scared of this life. I mean, I'm not scared of this life, Andy. I don't think you are either. Um, I want to enjoy it as long as I can. I want to learn as much. I want to experience as much of this dance as I possibly can. I want to contribute as much as I can to other people's dances. I want to, I think, do what we were meant to do. We're up there. We're bored. Hey, let's create a challenging, creative, diverse puzzle, and let's go down and see how we do. And so I want to see how I do it as long as I can. And then when my time's done, then it's done, you know. But I want to play the game the way the way my soul enjoys playing it, and my soul enjoys playing it, by participating. I'm not a spectator. For years I couldn't watch sports on TV because I'm not a spectator. I want to be in the thick of it. I want to be in the fight. I want to be in the struggle. I want to be in the challenge. Now I'm getting old. My shoulder hurts. My hip hurts. My neck hurts. My jaw hurts from yelling too much. And now I do enjoy watching a good competitive sport, but I enjoy watching competitive sports because it helps me remember when I was competitive. And I enjoy watching when I watch the Olympics, the most emotional thing for me to watch is gymnastics. When I watch a human being literally do the farthest edge of what a human body can possibly do with the consciousness residing in it, I cry, I laugh, I get emotional, I get impressed, I get enthralled, I get motivated. And it's because I'm watching one of our consciousness, one of our brothers or sisters, drive their Ferrari to the very farthest limit they can drive that thing, and watching one of our consciousness, learn how to drive one of these bodies that good with that much courage and focus and discipline. And, I just can't, like, that's one of the best of us. Cause look at the harmony they have between their thoughtful self and their physical self. And it's also why I get so frustrated when I see those that are broken, the overweight, the people that refuse to strengthen and condition their bodies. They refuse to develop their bodies because here they were given this sports car and they turned it into a dump truck, you know. And of course I feel Missy, and why even at a young age I got really frustrated when I dealt with anyone who was handicapped in any way. Like, man, you're down here in this experience and you're in a three-wheeler, or you're in a big wheel, and this guy's in a Ducati. The disparity of the different rides we were given for this life is something that I've struggled with my whole life. Like, why are some of us given so many talents and so many potentials and so many things to help us get through this life, and some of us are given so few assets, so few tools, and that's something that even to this day, you can see I'm getting upset. I get passionate about it. Like, that's something my soul is still trying to solve, that riddle of the disparity of the talents and why some of us were given so much potential and some of us have gotten so little. And, you and I've talked about this. One of the thoughts that give me some peace on it is the concept of reincarnation. Well, guess what? The last ride, this guy was given everything. And now we're not going to give him anything. See how he does, or, maybe this ride is a result of how you performed your last ride. Maybe, if you perform at this level, then you get this level. Perform at this level, you get this level. I don't know the intricacies of the video game we're in. But I've known even at a young age, I was innately upset by people who didn't get to come down to this world and drive it like they stole it. You know, like to come down here and and ride, like really get out there and ride this world. And that's why the people who upset me the most, and why I don't call humans, I call people who were given the ride and aren't taking it. You know, they're not dancing until 2 o'clock in the morning. They're not climbing the mountains. They're not swimming in the oceans. They're not, helping the children learn. They're not contributing. They're not participating. They're just sitting here, bumps on the log. And those are the people that, I want to help the most and get frustrated with the most.
Well, I really hope that I really want to live up to my potential for myself, for people like you, for Nicole, for the boys. I really want to be that human. And I know with the spiritual path and everything I did, I was trying to remove the ego that doesn't seem to be in my path. Because I tried to change certain things and remove certain things, and it's still here. There's still something in me that drives me. I remember when I read the book Siddhartha.
Love that book. You introduced me to the book. I love that book. The ending still bugs me.
That's the reason I bring it up, because we would talk about it, and it was infuriating to you for him to sit next to the river and listen to the 10,000 voices, because you always talk about participation, putting points on the board. And I remember we'd always talk about that it was just different and everything else. And I thought that's where I wanted to be, because I thought that was peace and bliss. But that's obviously not what I am being guided towards. There's something in.
I think that's that. I think when that author wrote that part, that was him feeling homesick, and that was him putting in a beautiful way of how to feel not homesick. And I think all of us are drawn towards, sure, wouldn't it be nice to just go, wouldn't it be nice to go home? Wouldn't it be nice just to go sit by the river, listen to the 10,000 voices and be done? But again, I think that's supposed to just be a pause, a break, a moment, a regathering, catch your breath. I think when the author was writing that, they were probably burned out and homesick, and they put that together and it made sense. And I think we're all going to get there again. I think by the end of your life, by the time you're done, that's what we're going to want. You're done. But not yet. I think you're 100% right. I think, I don't think you have a choice. I think that's an illusion. I don't think you have a choice of whether or not you're going to be the human being that you're meant to be, and that you're going to reach your potential. I think that's inevitable. I really believe, I believe you're already the human you're supposed to be. And I believe you're going to continue to unfold to become the human you want to be. And I think that desire, I have the same desire. I want to be the best I can be. I think the most important thing we can learn in this journey is that how to have that in a positive box and not a negative box. Instead of having it in a negative box of, I'm not yet the person I want to be and I feel bad about that. One of the biggest things I try to teach people is the two sides of one coin of, hey, I'm not good enough yet. I want to be more, but I love who I am today. And when you can really master that combination of wanting to be more and better than you were yesterday, but still loving who you are today, that's when you can really get some progress on this path. That's when you can really let that authentic version of yourself out and feel comfortable and feel confident, is when you really master the mindset of wanting to be better, but liking who you are.
Beautiful. Very well put. One last question. What is truth to you?
That's a last question. That may have been the first question, because that's another 6 hours, I think. Don Sorrell was my first philosopher teacher at West Valley College in California. And he's the one that introduced me to the concept of capital T's and little t's, capital T truths and little t truths. And it was his opinion that there are very, very few capital T truths. There are many lower Many people. I consider myself a truth seeker. So you would think someone who is a truth seeker would know what the definition of truth is. But I think your title, I mean, the truth has no sides. I think truth may be untangible on this plane. Um, I think truth is maybe one of those words like perfection, where we have an idea what it means, and yet none of us have ever really experienced it. Um, what is truth to me, man?
That's why I love this
As a
question, because
yeah,
everyone is confident, talking, just firing back and forth. As soon as I ask this question, I get a
yeah.
deep breath and a sigh and silence.
You know and it because again, let's go back to what we were talking about. Truth is a made up word. Someone somewhere made up the word truth to try to describe something to another group of people or an individual,
Through their
and
perspective.
we yeah, from their perspective. And so the and Descartes and I mean, so many philosophers have tried to break down truth to the simplest possible format. Is it imperial? Do you experience reality through your five senses? Do you experience it through your ability to reason? Is it a combination of the two? Um, truth. I wish you had prepared me with that question. Like, emailed me that 2 days ago. Emailed me a month ago. Hey, at the end of the interview, I'm going to ask you, what is truth? Truth to me, and see, the problem is you can't say that. In classical philosophy, they tell you it's not subjective. Like, truth can't be subjective. It destroys the meaning of the word truth. Like, so you say the sentence, well, truth to me, that's you've made a fallacy. You can't say that. You can't say the truth to me because the truth is not subjective. Truth has to be universal. Unless you get into the other groups of people and they think no, truth is absolutely subjective. I believe that there is a universal truth, and that all of us are experiencing it through our five senses and through our reason and experiencing, and we're all experiencing it differently. And I think it's why we very rarely can agree as a group on anything, because I'm touching the trunk, I'm touching the tail. To me, the truth is there is an elephant, and none of us, I mean, very few of us are going to experience it, the trunk, the tail, the ear, the tusk. And I think that's what truth seekers do, is we feel the tail of the elephant and that's the truth. There's a tail. But what more is there? Oh, it's like a tree. This is this leg. But what more is there? Oh, here's this vast mountain. This is the stomach. And I think that what real truth seekers is they do realize there is an elephant, that we're all limited to our understanding of it through what part we're touching. Now go touch as much as you can and discuss it with as many as you can to the greatest understanding that you can. I just came up with that on the spot, by the way, so I'm actually kind of impressed with it. So,
it comes back to what you said: participate.
Yeah, participate, contribute, play. We're here for a reason. Don't waste it.
They understand there's more than the trunk. They understand that they're limited in their perception. They understand there is an elephant, and that with our perception and the tools we've been given, we'll never know. We can't.
And that's just the surface, right? Like, that's just the skin of the elephant. Mm-hmm. You haven't experienced the rib, the blood, just understanding that the elephant and the truth of the elephant goes way beyond just what you can touch of it. And that it's a lifetime journey. Maybe it's a several thousand lifetime journey. Maybe that's the whole point, is maybe we come down here 10,000 times because it takes you that long. And maybe that's the point. Once you get the whole elephant, is when you graduate.
So, Marshall,
I've had a great time, man.
Isn't that crazy how quickly an hour 45 goes by?
You and I have I would say 99% of our conversations, they go like this. Mm-hmm. Very few have we ever sat down and talked and had it. Well, that was nice. Got to go.
Yep. This has been great, man. Thank you for the time. I'll get this edited up. We'll get it out to the world and you can share it, but I'd
love to. I look forward to that.
Beautiful conversation. Thank you again. And don't cut off just yet. I need to make sure it uploads 100%, but we'll get it edited. So when I
Make sure you keep doing this. This is an important work. You need to keep doing this, and you need to use your charisma to get it out there.
it's fun. I mean, these
Yeah.
are basically how I've been living my life the last decade. Now they're just recorded.
Yep. 100%.
These conversations. Thanks again, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, brother.